Lori Steer has an intriguing skill. She only recently discovered she can actually travel in time. She recently used that skill to travel back to the time of the Civil War and help a young man who was preparing a speech. So she's going to be the evaluator this evening for this next speaker. He's tall enough to hunt geese with a rake.
Thank you, Merrill. Thank you all for this great opportunity to practice this here speech, which unfortunately my dog ate, and I thought I had an opportunity to get out. Yes, I am a little nervous that someone handed me this book from the future, and I'll be damned, it's got my speech right in here. No way out. Thank you all. And thank you to Ms. Lori Steer, who will be my evaluator tonight. Thank you. Okay. Humor, yes. Humor is a good way to lighten things up. I like a good joke. Has anybody heard about the one about the Confederate? No. Sometimes it's not appropriate. My notes. Yes. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, you know. And so, yes. And now, yes, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are here to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we do this. Oh, yes. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, or hallow this ground. It is the brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, who have consecrated this ground far above our poor abilities to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but they can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be here dedicated to the great work which those who struggled here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is for us to be here dedicated to the great unfinished task which they, oh yes, thank you, Mr. Tyler. Time has become much more accurate. Over and no one ever knew. Yes, let me see. And that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the ultimate measure of devotion. And that from these honored dead, see, that's why it's important we have notes, yes. And that we here do highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation under God shall have a rebirth at freedom, and that the government of the people, and by the people, and for the people, shall not kick the bucket from the earth. Yes, I crushed it. Did I not? Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you for this.
And at this time, I'd like to have Lori come up and do her evaluation. And if, Mr. President, if you don't mind staying up here, this is a little out of the ordinary for us. So ordinarily the speaker sits, but because this is a special presentation, we're going to have him remain on the
The weather is very warm, but I'll stand.
Yes.
All right.
Lori Steer.
Mr. President, thank you for sharing your speech with us here today and for allowing me to be your evaluator. I feel honored. Your message was immediately powerful to me. As soon as you began to speak, my attention was fully captured, and I think everyone else in the room was as well. Right away, you spoke of our nation, which is based on the principle that all men are created equal. This is something that unites every one of us, men and women in this room, helping us to more easily relate to you. Also giving us a feeling like we're all part of your profound cause. Your words were powerful and well chosen, and I can tell that you are a great speaker. However, I did find a few little improvements that you could make just to help strengthen your message. It's okay. You had a few filler words. You said "you know" a few times throughout your speech. There were a couple "and," "so's," and "ums" as well. And there was a little bit of pacing. A couple of times you turned your back over to this corner of the room and got a little distracted. Both of these habits are things that we all do from time to time. Can make you appear less sure of yourself as a speaker and can take away from the impact of the really important message that you're trying to deliver. Just try to keep that in mind when you give your speech. Stand, speak to your audience. Try not to use filler words. It's okay to pause, to remember what you have to say. And that brings me to the notes. That's also something that can detract from your effectiveness, and I think that you have it down. If you practice just a few more times, you don't need to have your notes in your hand. People will be more captured by what you have to say if you're speaking from your heart as opposed to a piece of paper like I am right now. That's pretty much it as far as critiquing. I see that you did bring your megaphone, and if you are speaking to a larger crowd, I think everyone could hear back there. I would recommend using the megaphone if the crowd's any bigger than this.
Oh, yes.
And there was one thing that was intriguing to me at the end of your speech. You said, "kick the bucket." It was a term that I thought was a little insensitive, didn't quite fit with the tone of the rest of your speech. Perhaps you could Google another word.
Google.
Maybe to, never mind. Maybe we can help you.
Google.
Honestly, Abe, it was an amazing and inspiring speech, and I believe that your message applies to our nation just as much today as it did over 150 years ago. I know that your words will be noted and remembered for a very long time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
And yes, I do know that anyone can learn from Toastmasters. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. President.